What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another episode of All Bets Aren't Created Equal. I hope you enjoyed the week-long hiatus, a week without major MMA sports, no UFC, no Bellator, no PFL, none of that good stuff. We had some flow grappling, we had some AKA contests, some minor league MMA going on, but I'll tell you what, I am very excited, very happy to get back to business, get back to work, and today we're going to be focused and concerned on UFC Fight Night 189. Jairzinho Rozenstruik facing off against Augusto Sakai in a heavyweight contest. Now, I'll tell you what, this has real deal heavyweight implications because Rozenstruik, though he is coming off of a loss, he's ranked number 6 in the division. And Augusto Sakai, of course, we haven't seen him in a while. He will be making his 2021 debut with this contest, and he is ranked number 9 in the division. So the beautiful part about the heavyweight division in the UFC is that you could take a couple of losses and, string a couple good wins together and be right back in that title picture. Francis Ngannou is going to need as much competition as he can get because it's going to be tough taking the belt away from that man. But nonetheless, folks, I want to drop a reminder, drop a like, subscribe, head over to our website, All Factors Considered, if you dig in the content that we're putting out each and every single week. Obviously, we had an off week last week because there was no MMA to cover, but we're back, we're ready, we're, ready to handle some business, man. And I do have to do a little bit of recap before we get into what we need to talk about today. If you bet my picks last week, you went 5-1 on the 6 main card bouts. That's pretty good, man, if you ask me. And if we're really looking back on it, we went 5-1 2 weeks in a row. So this is definitely the outlet, the premium source for your betting content, for your recap content, for your analysis content and everything, man. So with all of the formalities aside, drop a like, subscribe, and rate us on Apple Podcasts. Definitely help us climb up those leaderboards. Everyone's talking about how they have the best MMA podcast, but I would beg to differ. Nonetheless, I think that without any further ado, let's get into business. Okay, the first matchup that we're going to be talking about today is, of course, what everybody is here for, which is Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Biggie Boy versus Augusto Sakai. And I'm going to break things down a little more simply this time around, a little more conservative in terms of the time consumption that we're talking about today. So we're talking about two knockout artists, but they grab these knockouts in two different fashions, right? Jairzinho Rozenstruik, let's not forget, this man is a former kickboxer. He went 76-8 as a professional kickboxer with 64 knockouts. So this man packs a punch. He really has power behind his hands, but he doesn't necessarily hold the same technical capabilities that Augusto Sakai does. Now, Augusto Sakai, he has 11 knockouts in his MMA career. He's 15-2 overall in MMA, 4-1 in the UFC, but what's important is he's very technical, and he doesn't really overextend himself. Now, I will be honest, he doesn't have the greatest physique in the heavyweight division, but as a heavyweight, not everyone needs to look like a specimen like Francis Ngannou, right? Chiseled six-pack, have to cut down to get down to 265. Augusto Sakai got a belly, but don't let the belly fool you because he will put you to sleep if you're not careful with the man. So the big things that we need to focus on here, folks, is in terms of the measurables, it's almost identical. 6'4" is Rozenstruik, 6'3" is Sakai, 78-inch reach for Rozenstruik, 77-inch reach for Sakai. So what makes the difference in this fight? And I'll tell you from a betting perspective, let's talk about the opening odds off the bat. -120 favorite is Jairzinho Rozenstruik with a +100 comeback for Augusto Sakai. Now, let me remind you, folks, when I'm talking about these odds, the odds that I am referring to are the opening odds for the week. So when I'm taking a look at it right now, the odds have already changed, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik is even more of a favorite than he was before. He's now a -130 favorite with the +105 comeback for Augusto Sakai. And I'm going to tell you what, first thing off the bat, you want to find some value, we're going to find value in Augusto Sakai. So I think this is a clear indication of what have you done for me lately, a clear indication of out of sight, out of mind. Like I said, this is going to be Augusto Sakai's 2021 debut. So when we're talking about common opponents here, we're going to be talking about how Alistair Overeem, is a common opponent between Sakai and Rozenstruik. When we're looking at Andrei Arlovsky, it's a common opponent between Rozenstruik and Sakai. And if we look at the differences in, the victories or the losses, Sakai has the loss against Overeem, but Jairzinho Rozenstruik has a win over Overeem. But when we really look at it, not just looking at what the stat line says or what the stat sheet says or whatever, but when we watch the fight, Jairzinho Rozenstruik had to get that knockout at the last minute of the 5th round to get the win over Alistair Overeem, or else he would have been cruising to a decision loss like he did against Cyril Gane. Now, in the opposite format, Sakai, he was really putting it on Alistair Overeem until it got towards the end of the fight. He gassed out a little bit and he got finished. I believe it was with ground and pound or something of that nature. And he even contested the finish. I mean, it was a fair finish. Overeem got the job done, but he still contested it. So that's the thing, man. It's not like these were some clear cut, he's just starching one dude, and it's not quite like that, right? So when I'm assessing this battle, I told you that there's real deal value to be had in, Augusto Sakai. This man doesn't overextend himself very often, and he's going to sit back at range. Now, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, what did he suffer from against Cyril Gane? Is that he wasn't willing to be first. He wasn't willing to walk forward. Now, Augusto Sakai, he's going to play that Cyril Gane range game where he's going to sit back and only hit you where you can't hit him. He's going to grab you, get up close, and then throw these weird, unorthodox side hammer fists that he have. I really, really enjoy it. But at the end of the day, what he utilizes the most is a lot of lateral movement and smart pressure. He'll back off when he needs to back off, and he'll get on when he needs to get on, but it's only when the shots are available. He's not winging a bunch of punches with a very low accuracy rating. And speaking of accuracy, both of these fighters have a significant strike accuracy of 48%, which is very telling because Augusto Sakai lands about 5 significant strikes per minute, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik is about 3. So clearly what this is going to come down to is the power puncher, the big dude who needs to land the big shot on you to get you out of here versus the dude who can do the cumulative damage but can also knock you out with one shot. But it might take a couple more for Augusto Sakai. And you know me, folks, if we're sitting here and we're going around week after week after what I talk about, I always favor the individual who can do a little bit more, because Jairzinho Rozenstruik, if he doesn't walk forward, it's going to be a long night. He's just going to sit there and stare at the mirror like he did against Cyril Gane, because it seems to me that Jairzinho Rozenstruik has a little bit of an issue against fighters who use a lot of movement. Now, when he's fighting, slow plodding, you know what I mean, dudes who don't use too much movement, like Junior Dos Santos is a perfect example. Now, he has that sideways boxing stance, but he's not moving all over the place. He's kind of hopping back and forth, but he's not really just moving laterally, side to side all the time, right? When he fought Andrei Arlovski, he got the win, but, I mean, look at that situation as well. It's not a dude who's utilizing a lot of movement. Now, when he lost to Cyril Gane, it's the movement guy, and when he loses to Francis Ngannou, I mean, can we really count that? Francis Ngannou is just a wrecking force, right? But at the end of the day, Augusto Sakai has the secret weapon that Jairzinho Rozenstruik does not have, which is why I find the value in Augusto Sakai, which is why I look at the odds and I say, oh, I do not know how I feel about this, or I know how I feel about it, but I don't like the odds. And the reason why is because Augusto Sakai is a BJJ brown belt with a very clear grappling advantage in this matchup. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that he wants to take it to the ground. I mean, he averages less than a takedown per fight, so he doesn't want to take it to the ground, but he can. And sometimes when you really, really need a win, these fighters diverge from their original game plan, from the game plan that has got them to the big show, because they need to do what they need to do to get the win. And I honestly believe that if Augusto Sakai starts to have some issues with Jairzinho Rozenstruik, if Rozenstruik starts to put it on him a little bit, Augusto Sakai is going to take Rozenstruik down and use the ground and pound to try to finish him. It's very, very clear. We saw it in his last fight against Overeem. I mean, he was willing to have Overeem in his guard and try to play out of the guard. He wasn't really too interested in standing up either, which was also interesting because we don't know if that's a cardio thing or because he's just that confident in his guard. At the end of the day, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, he has those heavy hands, but as I've said, it comes at the cost of low volume, you know what I mean? He has these really sharp leg kicks and underrated foot speed, but you got to be able to let your hands go if you want that to mean anything. Because at the end of the day, Jairzinho Rozenstruik has 1 decision victory out of his 11 total wins. So if he's not knocking you out, he's kind of not really winning. Now, Augusto Sakai, he has 4 decision wins and 11 knockouts. So at the end of the day, folks, I'm favoring Augusto Sakai. I say this is a live dog right here, and this is an individual who, once again, out of sight, out of mind. I'm telling you, this dude is a monster. He has been hyped up for the past couple of years, and just because he's been out of action since, COVID has gone, down or whatnot, like I said, man, you just lose a lot of that hype. So that's what I have for our main event at UFC Fight Night 189, Augusto Sakai. I'm calling that he pulls an upset, and I'm calling this too because I think that since it's going to be a 5-round matchup, when we know Jairzinho Rozenstruik, he can kind of play that sitting and just standing and looking in the mirror for 5 rounds. This could very well go down on point. So that's another advantage to take care of in terms of value. So that's what I got for the main event, UFC Fight Night 189. This next contest that we have, folks, is another heavyweight bout, which is why I actually really enjoy this card, because we have 2 heavyweight bouts, 3 middleweight bouts, and a welterweight bout. So we got some big boys throwing hands on this card. But it's a heavyweight bout with the plus 145 underdog as our A side, and Walt Harris facing off against the streaking Marcin Tybura, who is a minus 170 favorite in this fight. Now, Marcin Tybura, he's on a 4-fight win streak right now, and though I will say his last win against Greg Hardy shouldn't probably be counted counted that high, it's still very impressive because he's beat the likes of Ben Rothwell, Maxim Grishin, and Sergey Spivak, all since 2020. He had a very, very busy 2020. He fought 4 times last year. Now, this will also be his 2021 debut. This will be both fighters' 2021 debut, but we need to talk about something before we talk about the actual X's and O's. Walt Harris just came out in his pre-fight interview for this weekend's contest talking about how, in all honesty, the last 2 fights that he took against Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov, he probably shouldn't have taken those fights because of he wasn't quite healed all the way mentally, if that makes sense. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, folks, Walt Harris suffered a very crazy personal tragedy. It's the whole situation with his stepdaughter, and I don't really want to talk about it too much, but basically he had his mind not on fighting for the better part of the last couple of years because of the craziness that has gone down in his personal life with his family. So since then, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Now, before that, he has some big wins against Alexei Oleinik. He knocked him out in the first round. Sergey Spivak, once again, he knocked him out in the first round, and his last fight against Andrei Arlovsky was a no contest, so we're not going to count that. But let's talk about what we need to talk about in the X's and O's. It's clear why Marcin Tybura is the favorite here, because he's surging, because he knows how to squeak out a win, and because he's another one of those heavyweights that has quick hands and very fluid movement. A lot of that lateral movement. He's a switch fighter, so he'll go orthodox and southpaw back and forth, and as we know, Walt Harris is a southpaw fighter, and he's not really going to throw that much output because he's looking to knock your head off of your shoulder. So when he does connect, it's going to be a long night. Now, this is where it really gets interesting, folks, because Walt Harris, 13-9 in his MMA career. He's 6-8 in the UFC. That's not too hot. Marcin Tybura is 21-6 in MMA and 8-5 in the UFC. So he actually has a lot more experience. Like, this man's been doing the thing for a while, and he's younger than Walt Harris as well. Now, even though he's 2 inches shorter at 6'3", while Walt Harris is 6'5", he has a 1-inch reach advantage, 78-77 for Marcin Tybura, and he trains out of Jackson Wink MMA. Now, that's going to be the big key right here, because when you're fighting out of Jackson Wink, you got a lot of killers in there, a lot of people who are really trying to push for you to get the big dubs, man. So when it comes down to it, let's just look at the striking and how this fight could take place on the feet. Now, we saw in Marcin Tybura's last fight against Greg Hardy, he kind of got outclassed by Greg Hardy on the feet. And we know Greg Hardy, that's really all he has in his repertoire right now is heavy hands, and he's very quick and athletic, and that's cool, but you're not the full package of an MMA fighter. Now, what did Tybura do? At first, it was kind of like we're, sirens on, we're screaming, we're like, what is going on? Is Greg Hardy about to win? But in reality, Marcin Tybura, I think his game plan was, I'm just going to let this dude wear himself out for the first round. Yeah, I got to eat a couple punches, whatever. I got a tough chin. Come the second round, I'm going to ground and pound, and that's game over. And literally, the running joke was that Greg Hardy, he didn't lose via TKO. He lost because he was just tired, so he just tapped due to fatigue. You know what I mean? So you would think that Marcin Tybura would get knocked a little bit because when you're fighting a dude like Greg Hardy, you should just be starching this dude. But Volkov fought Greg Hardy, and he wasn't even able to finish him. I believe that went down to a decision. So at the end of the day, Marcin Tybura, he's got chops on him, man. This dude is ready. He's surging, and if he can make it 5 wins in a row, then he has a real deal claim to that UFC heavyweight division top 10, top 5. He's ranked 11 right now with Walt Harris ranked at number 8. So if he beats Harris, he's at least going to number 8. But I think he should probably go up to the top 5 because, come on, 5 wins in a row at the heavyweight division, that's killing the game. At the end of the day, when we're talking about striking accuracy, Tybura doesn't nearly have as much of pop on his punch that Walt Harris does. He lands at a 50% clip at about, 4 significant strikes per minute. But like I said, Walt Harris, he's here to knock you out, man. And when he's fighting at his best, it's punches and bunches. But there is one thing that I really do like about Walt Harris, and he's talking about how he's motivated. I mean, we're just going to have to see. Momentum is a thing that I talk about often in this game, but the thing that's interesting is that Walt Harris has a very tight defensive guard, kind of Overeem style, where he just turtles up, and it looks like he's taking a bunch of damage, but in reality, he's just shelling up, not conserving energy, and then coming back out, full force, ready to go. When Walt Harris is lost, he's lost 4 times by knockout and 3 times via decision. Now, when Marcin Tybura has lost, it's 4 times by knockout and 2 times by decision. But we know that Marcin Tybura, outside of his last win against Greg Hardy, he's more or less of a decision fighter. So that's where it's going to be interesting. I'd like to see where Walt Harris's gas tank is in the 3rd round, because he got finished in both of his last 2 fights in the 2nd round. And if we're looking at when he beats people, generally speaking, he knocks you out in the 1st round, and that's just how he gets the job done. So it'll be an interesting contest, but I'll tell you what, man, Marcin Tybura has a good fight IQ, knows how to squeak out a win, and once again, just like the matchup that I just talked about in the main event, Marcin Tybura is a BJJ black belt under Kamil Uminski, man. This is an individual who will take the fight to the ground. He wants to grapple you, and he wants to use mean ground and pound to finish you. And I think that if he could take away Walt Harris, who's a little one-dimensional, being a southpaw who's a big puncher, but that's really it, right? It's going to be interesting to see if he can implement that game plan and just get him to the ground and do what he does best, because Walt Harris did make a note that he has some offensive wrestling in his back pocket if Marcin Tybura thinks he could just grapple him and, handle business that way. So it'll be interesting, but I can only go based off of what I have seen recently. And like I said, Tybura has been streaking. He hasn't really gotten the credit that he deserves for the streak that he's on, but I'm going to go with the momentum. And I think Marcin Tybura just has too many tools in his tool belt for Walt Harris right now, who really needs a win. And like we say, pressure could either break you or it can make you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, man. It's tough. And it's a coin flip because Walt Harris is the bigger name. But like I said, Marcin Tybura, just when you watch him, you see, yeah, it doesn't really look too pretty, man. But a win is a win is a win. And I got Marcin Tybura minus 170. But specifically, I'm going Marcin Tybura via points against Walt Harris. So not only can you go money line if that's what you're interested in, but you could drop the prop bet down to Marcin Tybura, via points. He's a minus 170 as an opening odd in terms of the money line, but let me take a look right now. On points, it looks like Marcin Tybura to win by decision is plus 180. So you're going from minus 170 to go for Tybura via, just any type of win to plus 180 for points. And let's be honest, like I said, outside of Greg Hardy, his last 3 wins before that against Ben Rothwell, Maxine Grisham, and Sergey Spivak have all been unanimous decision victories. So Marcin Tybura by points, big dub. That's what I got for that one. Now we have a welterweight contest on our hands, and I'll tell you what, the odds on this one are a little ridiculous as well, because it is another form of a young prospect coming up, doing his thing, trying to, he's undefeated Miguel Baeza on a 10-fight win streak, 10-0, 3-0 in the UFC, but he's fighting a buzzsaw in Santiago Ponzinio, who, unfortunately, he got caught in his last fight against Li Jingliang, man. He ate a mean, I believe it was like a left hook from the leech, man, and that put him down. And I'll tell you what, that was Santiago Ponzinio fighting a little uncharacteristically, and he got caught, for it. But just because you lose one fight, this man was on a 7-fight win streak prior to that. He had 2 years of his career lost due to a staph infection and due to COVID-19. So it's like, I think it's forgivable. Personally, I think it's forgivable. And let's just talk about it. So Santiago Ponzinio, is a plus 100 underdog against Miguel Baeza, who, while he's fought some cool dudes, some legit dudes, he hasn't really fought the same caliber of opponents that Ponzinio has, especially when Ponzinio was on this streak. So let's just talk about common opposition first and foremost. Now, Miguel Baeza, the 28-year-old, and Ponzinio is a 34-year-old. So he's got a quite bit of age, some youth advantage right there. But his last big win was against Sato. I'm blanking on the first name, but this was at 170 pounds last year. Sato, he got a win, submission round 2. Before that, he beat Matt Brown in a fight that was so back and forth, in a fight where Baeza almost got stopped and then came out the next round and just knocked out Matt Brown, TKO round 2. I mean, that was impressive, but then again, we're talking about an old Matt Brown. You know what I mean? This is a 2020 Matt Brown. This is a dude who was supposed to retire a couple of fights ago. So while this is a big name, I think that we need to temper our expectations a little bit, because when we look at the fight before that against the individual, I believe it's Hector Aldana, and that was a TKO round 2 win. All right, cool. So, Baeza, he's coming up the ranks. He's doing his thing. He's 10-0, man. He's where a prospect should be. And I'll tell you what, the man has serious power. His right hand and his right leg carry massive power. And I'll talk about it a little bit more in a second, but Miguel Baeza, he has shown a little bit of a tendency to be a little one-dimensional, right? He kind of goes to the well with the same combos time and time again, and against a dude that's a killer like Ponzinio, that's not going to be good. So I'll tell you what I like about Ponzinio is not only is he experienced, the dude is 27-4 in his MMA career, 9-3 in the UFC. He's a rhythm striker, kind of like a groovy Lando Venata. He kind of needs to get into his rhythm to be able to be effective offensively, right? Because he doesn't really favor chaos or brawls. He got into a brawl against Jing Liang and got knocked out. So clearly that's not really his fight. But I'll tell you what, this dude has a lot of Muay Thai experience. Great Muay Thai fighter. He has a mean right leg kick, and that's going to be very important if he's going to want to kind of neutralize the power of Baeza and immobilize the man a little bit. At the end of the day, when we're talking about measurables, it's basically the same once again, right? Baeza's a couple of inches taller, 6 foot to 6'2". He has a 1-inch reach advantage, 74 inches to 73, but everything else is basically the same. The big difference is the accuracy of Miguel Baeza. This man averages about, 4.6 significant strikes landed per minute at a 55% clip. We can go back to Ponzinio. He's about 4.2 significant strikes landed per minute at a 40% clip. So the accuracy is a lot different. And like I said, Baeza packs a punch, man. This dude has real deal pop. But Ponzinio has experience. And that's something that is an intangible, something that you can't look at on the stat sheet necessarily. And it really stands out to you unless, truly, we're looking at opposition. So let me just run it down for Ponzinio really quick. Okay, you lost to Li Jingliang. All right, it's fair game, right? But before that, in 2018, because like I said, 2019 and 2020 were lost for Ponzinio because of staph infection and COVID. He has a knockout round 4 win against Neil Magny. Neil Magny, who looked like an absolute killer in his last fight. He has a unanimous decision win against Mike Perry in 2017. Knocked out Gunnar Nelson in 2017 in the first round, and it got a unanimous decision against Nordine Taleb, I believe is his name, back in 2017. So this man was on a streak. He's really killing the game, or he was. Back a couple years ago. And listen, man, when we're talking about things that he does good, he cuts off the cage very well and he does not rush his work. So that's why I'm favoring Ponzinio in this fight. I think Baeza is very, very scary, but he doesn't fight nearly as well off of his back foot. And I believe a veteran like Ponzinio, who will have his head cool, calm, and collected in this fight. Maybe he was a little bit of rust in that last fight. And I'm not sitting here trying to play favorites or anything like that. I'm just rolling with the experience in this one. It's hard to bet against experience because Ponzinio has 15 knockouts, 6 submissions, and 6 decisions. Baeza, 7 knockouts, 1 submission, 2 decisions. So the question is going to be asked, okay, well, when it gets down all 3 of those rounds, man, what can you do? Can you go the distance time in and time out, or do you need to win, off of, these finishes? Because streaks come to an end when you get into the UFC, and Baeza's been doing his thing so far. He's 3-0, but I'll tell you what, the big difference comes down to the experience once again. I will say both of these fighters are BJJ black belts, so that's going to be interesting if we do see some ground game, but I honestly think that Ponzinio is going to be trying to cut off the cage. Maybe Baeza has Ponzinio on the back foot at first, but I think eventually the tide will shift. Ponzinio will have Baeza on the back foot. He'll be cutting off the cage, and he's just going to have to be super careful that he doesn't do the same thing he did against Li Jingliang and get caught with a big hook over the top and just, get slept, man. That's not what you want. So long story short, folks, Miguel Baeza, the last thing that I have on him, which is why I'm favoring Ponzinio in this fight, is because he uses his head movement and his footwork a lot more than his guard, right? And what I mean by that is like he doesn't put his hands up to protect his face. Instead, he tries to go kind of Dusko Todorovic style and just, use his agility and his quickness. And while that's great because he's young and he can do that, man, you got to be careful against a dude like Santiago Ponzinio, who at one point, just a couple of years ago, man, this is a dude who we're talking about who could be the next welterweight champion. So it's like you're fighting real deal killers here. This is going to be a big test, and I'm going with the experience. Santiago Ponzinio, but to be a little more specific, I think he wins via decision. Okay, folks, this next matchup is a really interesting one. This is a middleweight bout against Roman Dolidze and Laureano Starpoli. Now, this is interesting because both of these fighters are more or less in new waters here. Dolidze had his first fight at 185 pounds in his last fight in the UFC, which he lost to Trevin Giles. And it was a very close fight, but Trevin Giles, he just had a little too much for Roman Dolidze. I mean, this is a man who came down from 205 to 185. Now, the difference here is Laureano Starpoli, he's fought the last 4 fights and most of his career at 170, or last 5 fights, and most of his career at 170 pounds. I mean, this man's a welterweight, but he's taking this fight at middleweight. And I believe that this is a short notice replacement because Dolidze was supposed to have a different opponent. Nonetheless, Starpoli moving up weight and Dolidze having his second fight at a weight class lower. It'll be really interesting to see who acclimates quicker, you know what I mean? Because who's to say Starpoli can't sit there and acclimate a little bit quicker in his first fight. Nonetheless, minus 140 is the odds opening up for Roman Dolidze with a plus 120 comeback for Laureano Starpoli. And that's the opening week odds. So when I'm looking at it right now, it looks like Roman Dolidze is a minus 150 favorite, plus 120 for Starpoli. So it really hasn't changed much. This is really all I have to say about this fight, folks. Roman Dolidze enjoys a 76-inch reach, 76-inch in terms of his reach, as opposed to 71 inches for Starpoli. So that is a 5-inch reach advantage. That is crazy. That is a lot, and it's going to be a bridge that Starpoli is really going to need to gap if he wants to win, if he wants to be successful. Now, on the other side, I will say Starpoli is a very dynamic fighter, uses a lot of feints and stance switches, and he has this unorthodox way about him where he uses a lot of kicks, and that can make up for the reach difference right there because your legs are longer than your arms. But Roman Dolidze has serious power at 185, man. Like, he had crazy power at 205, came down to 185, has even more power, and you're about to fight a dude who's really a 170er. So it's like, if we went back a couple months, this would be a 205er fighting 170 pounds. I mean, come on, dude, that's 40-pound difference. And not to mention that Roman Dolidze, he is a 2016 ADCC Asia Trials gold medalist at 218 pounds, and that's the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, excuse me. I was blanking on that one for a second. So this dude's jiu-jitsu is legit. He's a former WWFC 205-pound champion with a one title defense, and he uses these mean leg kicks to immobilize his opponent. So that's going to be really a tough test for Starpoli to pass. I'm a big fan of Starpoli. I think he's really, really good, but he needs space to find a rhythm. And Dolidze is an individual who will pressure you, who will walk you down. That's what he did to Trevin Giles, what he does to everybody, really. But at the end of the day, Laureano Starpoli, man, he's fighting out of shoot the box under Diego Lima. I believe that's the same camp that Charles Oliveira, the champ, 155-pound champ, is fighting right now. At the end of the day, man, these dudes are both switch fighters. Starpoli has much more output, but he's way less accurate. So lands at about a 34% clip, 4 significant strikes per minute. When, Dolidze, it's kind of like that Walt Harris. Like, he's not going to throw as much, but when he throws, he's going to hit you. And when he hits you, he's going to put you to sleep. So he lands about 3 significant strikes per minute at a 50% clip. Kind of crazy. The X factor here, folks, I'll just make it super simple for you. Roman Dolidze has the thing in his back pocket that Starpoli, excuse me, he kind of fell victim to. He has in his last 2 fights, and that is if you take him to the ground, it's going to be a long night. I mean, Roman Dolidze, his whole entire thing was against Trevin Giles was the heel hooks, man. So it's like if Roman Dolidze says, I'm going to smash your face and then I'm going to put you on the ground and there's really nothing you can do about it, it's going to be interesting to see how Laureano can, change the tide there. Everything is thrown with bad intentions when you're talking about Roman Dolidze. And, yeah, man, I wish I had more, but I don't necessarily. I mean, Starpoli had big wins against Thiago Alves. That was very good because it shows that you can get the job done against a kickboxer, but Thiago Alves doesn't nearly have the power that Roman Dolidze does. So I think that, this is Starpoli saying, listen, man, I've been out of action for a while. This will be his 2021 debut. But at the end of the day, man, this is probably him doing a favor to the UFC more than anything, because I got Roman Dolidze winning this fight via knockout. I got second round knockout in this one. I just find it hard to believe that Starpoli it can sit there and outpoint Dolidze or do whatever you can, because Dolidze looks like a real killer. So that's what I got on that matchup. Okay, folks, I got a middleweight bout. Once again, we got Dusko Todorovic, who I just talked about, facing off against another short notice replacement, and Gregory Rodriguez, man. I'll tell you, this is going to be the most simplistic breakdown that we have here. Dusko Todorovic, he's a great, great puncher, man. Straight punches are his go-to, has super fast reflexes, but he keeps his hands so low, and he has a habit of keeping his chin sky high in transition, man. But he can end your night, man. He has real deal power. He can knock your head off with a wide array of kicks. He's a BJJ black belt. Excuse me, I don't believe he's a BJJ black belt. I take that back. But this dude's a killer, man. This dude is 10-1. He had his first loss in his entire MMA career in his last fight against Punahele Soriano, man. He got knocked out in the first round. And once again, why? It's because this dude doesn't want to use his guard. He wants to just use head movement and use footwork to try to get out the way. But that's how you get caught, man. And he's fighting a dude who, in Gregory Rodriguez, who's willing to trade in order to inflict damage, man. This dude is a killer, I'll tell you that much. The opening odds are -165 for Dusko, plus 140 comeback for Gregory Rodriguez. And Rodriguez, it's a funny story because so he fought Jordan Williams in the Dana White Contender Series back in 2020. This is at 185 pounds, and he got knocked out in the first round. He just kind of got caught by Williams. It was one of those upset ones where I think Rodriguez was the favorite in that one, and one thing led to another. You just get caught, man. That's the fight game, right? So most people would say, oh, well, you finally made it to the Contender Series. You lost. You got knocked out. All right, that's it for you. You're done. You're going to go back to the regional. You're never going to make it back to the UFC. But what does he do? He goes and he wins his next fight via knockout, second round and first round wins, both in 2021. And his last fight was for the LFA 185-pound title, and he won it via a knockout, man. So this dude says, all right, I'm going to take this experience I got from the Dana White Contender Series, and I'm going to parlay it, and I'm going to go win a championship in another organization. This kind of reminds me of I'm blanking on the man's name. He's fighting right now in Bellator to do it. Danny Sabatello. There we go. Apologies, folks. Danny Sabatello. He went on the Contender Series, didn't get picked. He went and won a Titan FC championship, and now he's fighting in Bellator, won his Bellator debut. I have a feeling that this is what we're going to see from Gregory Rodriguez, and I'm very I just don't feel good that it's going to come against Dusko Todorovic if my prediction is correct, because I'm a really big fan of Dusko. I just would think he needs to, shore a couple things up. At the end of the day, both of these fighters land about 6 to 7 significant strikes per minute. Both of them are over 50%. 62% for Dusko, 56% for Rodriguez. And the thing that we don't have right here is we don't have any takedown statistics for Gregory Rodriguez because he hasn't had any UFC fights. But I'll tell you what he likes to do is he likes to smash your face in. He has a heavy right hand, but he wants to grab you, put you on the ground, and finish the night with ground and pound. That's his strategy. Now, Dusko would prefer not to be on the ground necessarily. You know what I mean? He does have 3 submission wins. Shout out, you know what I mean? But he wants to box you, and he wants to use his reach and his length, and he has a 1-inch reach disadvantage in this fight, 74 to 75 inches. But at the end of the day, man, this dude wants to box with you, kickbox with you. I mean, those kicks of his, man, are crazy. The big hands is crazy, man. It's going to be an interesting bout. This is going to be a very, very warlike battle if things go the way that I think they're going to go. But once again, just like all the other picks that I'm talking about, if Rodriguez can get this fight to the ground, it's just going to be a long night for Dusko, man. Dusko doesn't necessarily seem to, when he talked about it in his pre-fight conference, he doesn't necessarily have seemed to have learned that much from his last loss against Punahele Soriano. So this leads me to believe that he's going to try to get into another war. He's probably not going to have his hands up. And as much as I'm a big fan of the man, Gregory Rodriguez is hungry. He has 4 knockouts, 4 submissions, and a decision win in his overall methodology. And he wants to get that right cross, man. That right cross can end the night. So I'm rolling with the upset here. I think that this is an individual that a lot of people don't know about, and I'm just fortunate enough because I've watched him fight, prior. Obviously, this is his UFC debut. I've already watched him fight multiple times. So with that being said, this is kind of the same story that I had with Dusko when Dusko first came into the UFC. I thought he would be really good. He got a big win in his UFC debut against Daquan Townsend. He knocked him out in the second round. But I'll tell you what, man, Gregory Rodriguez pulls the upset, in my opinion, plus 140. Lots of value to be had there. And if we're going specifics, I think he knocks Dusko out, man. You pay when you don't keep your hands up, and this is the name of the game that we're playing here. So that's what I got on that one, folks. Okay, so this is the last fight on the main card, and then I'm going to drop just a couple parlays and get out of here, folks. We have another middleweight contest, and the odds are a little bit different on this one. Minus 240 favorite is Tom Breeze with a plus 200 comeback for Antonio Ahoyo. Now, I'll tell you this much. Tom Breeze, 12-3 in MMA, 5-3 in the UFC, is fighting a dude who needs a win bad. Ahoyo is 9-4 in his MMA career, but he's 0-2 in his UFC tenure, even though he has a very scary striking ability, man. He throws kicks of all sorts and blitzing punches, and I'll tell you what, man, if he wants to win right here, he has to avoid the ground at all costs. And that's why, from a betting perspective, I'm going Tom Breeze, because his left cross, he's a southpaw, and his left cross is a loaded missile ready to fire, man. This dude can absolutely starch you with his boxing. Like, when you look at his frame, this dude used to fight at welterweight. His last welterweight fight was against Sean Strickland, a fight that he lost via split decision. But this dude's been in the UFC for a while. Like I said, he's 5-3 in the UFC. He has experience. He's got a huge frame. His physique is incredible. His boxing is clearly his best skill set, and he has a very, very crispy jab. And, I mean, he'll be humoring Antonio Ahoyo if he just keeps it on the feet, because he also has 6 submission wins. If he gets the fight to the ground, he is a BJJ black belt under Chi Kwang Man. If he gets the fight to the ground, I mean, that's how Antonio Ahoyo has gotten just embarrassed in his last 2 fights. So when he fought Andre Muniz, yes, the same one who just broke Jacare's arm, he lost via unanimous decision. Went to the ground a lot in that fight. When he fought Deron Winn in his last fight, which was not a 185-pound contest, this was a 195-pound catchweight contest, and I believe it was because it was a short notice situation or something like that. He got taken out like a million times, man. It was very embarrassing to watch, to be honest with you. And it just goes to show that it's like you have to be well-rounded if you really want to win in this game. So when we have a Tom Breeze versus an Antonio Ahoyo, I think the matchmakers are banking on, all right, this dude is going to sit here and just box with him. And I think Tom Breeze is pissed off because he lost his last fight against Omari Akhmedov via a submission loss in the second round in a fight that he was putting it on Akhmedov, man. Akhmedov is tough, though. And Akhmedov, this is an individual who, listen, man, he's scary for a reason. At the end of the day, folks, everything is just about the same in terms of measurables for these fighters. They both land at very high clips, but Tom Breeze... So Tom Breeze lands at a 50% clip, about 3 significant strikes per minute. About the same for Antonio Ahoyo, except he's at a 70% clip. But let me tell you why. It's because he's really not hitting you that much, to be completely honest with you. I mean, when we're talking about these significant strikes, a lot of the time he's been on his back in his UFC tenure. So I don't know how much we could read into that. At the end of the day, Tom Breeze has a habit of following and not cutting off the cage. And for that reason, I think that there is a little upside that could be had from Ahoyo if something crazy happens. But if we're banking on anything, I think we're banking on a very, very clear and decisive win for Tom Breeze, get him back in the win column. And I think that Breeze knocks out Antonio Ahoyo. I honestly believe his left hand is a missile. It is a rocket launcher. It is ready to explode. And that's been the name of the game. I'm predicting a couple of finishes, couple of, decision wins, but I think Tom Breeze is a stud. He's a great prospect, and his boxing is going to be too much for Antonio Ahoyo. But I will say, Antonio Ahoyo, if he lands on you, he can put you to sleep. So he has to be careful. But Tom Breeze is an excellent boxer, and if you're able to stay in that, B to C range instead of being right there in Ahoyo's face, you're going to have it's going to be a long night for Ahoyo. So I make this one super simple, super easy. In terms of a betting perspective, you got to go all day, Tom Breeze, minus 240. And let me just take a look right now at Tom Breeze. So when I'm looking at some prop bets right now, if we want Tom Breeze to win by a knockout, it's plus 150. Now, if we're talking about a decision, it's plus 225. And I think that both of those could have value, definitely. But if I'm banking on anything, if you want to go via a knockout, even though Ahoyo has not been knocked out in any of his last 5 fights, like I said, Tom Breeze is a different animal. Plus 150 for that, plus 225 for the decision, and plus 600 for a submission. That could be a very, very sneaky value play right there. Tom Breeze to win by submission. Let's not forget, he has 6 submissions in his total methodology. That's the most finishes out of any other type of method that he has. More than his knockouts, more than his decision wins, man. It's going to be a good fight. Tom Breeze all day long. Okay, folks, and then lastly, just before we get out of here, I just want to talk about a couple of prelim matchups that I think are kind of crazy, and I think that we got a couple of parlays that we could put together here. So the first matchup is Ariane Lipski versus Montana De La Rosa. This is a women's flyweight contest. Ariane Lipski is a plus 220 underdog, which is crazy to me. I know she's lost a couple in her last 5, but I'll tell you what, Montana De La Rosa did not look very impressive whatsoever in her last contest, and I think that in terms of a striking advantage, Ariane Lipski is going to have a better time on the feet than Montana De La Rosa, and if De La Rosa wants to take the fight to the ground, Ariane Lipski, though she's not a wrestler, she is a BJJ ace, and I mean, what is she known for? She got a lot of height off of that knee bar. I think it was from Carolina Luana or whatever the case may be. Listen, man, Ariane Lipski is a problem, and I know she lost her last contest against Antonina Shevchenko via ground and pound, which was very surprising, but I think that Lipski bounces back in this one, plus 220. Now, this next one was supposed to be Manon Fiorot versus Marina Moroz, and Moroz just pulled out. This is just news that I just found out today. So now she's fighting Tabitha Ricci, and I say all day long, there's no odds up for it right now, but if there are odds that do go up, you have to go Manon Fiorot. She is a beast. She is that's literally her nickname, the Beast. She's fighting out of France. She has that Wonderboy Thompson kind of Cyril Gane style, and she can hit you with everything, man. She hits hard, everything, kicks, punches. It does not matter. You want to take it to the ground, it does not matter. Fiorot is a beast. And then lastly, and if I didn't mention, that was a women's flyweight contest as well, 125 pounds. And then lastly, we have a contest against Sean Woodson versus Yusuf Zalal. This is a featherweight contest. And Sean Woodson, man, he lost his last fight, which was a little bit unfortunate. But I'll tell you what, man, because he lost his last fight to Julian Erosa. But I'll tell you what, man, this dude's measurables are crazy. He's 6'2", so he has a 4-inch height advantage over Zalal. He's 78-inch reach in comparison to Zalal's 72-inch reach, so that's a 6-inch reach advantage. We're just seeing that Zalal is not the greatest when it comes down to walking forward and creating his own offense. You know what I mean? He kind of has to react. He has to counterpunch. And Sean Woodson, man, if you're not going to go forward on the man, this dude is going to just pop you all day long with that jab, with the flying knees. You know, he's got knockout via flying knees. He's got a 77% takedown defense. So if Zalal tries to get the fight to the ground, I mean, this dude knows how to stay on his feet. At the end of the day, man, it's going to be a very, very good fight. And when I'm looking at it right now, it's going to be a good contest for Sean Woodson, in my opinion. I think this is going to be 3rd loss in a row for Yusuf Zalal, who came out as a very hot prospect during, the first UFC Vegases and whatnot. But when I'm looking at the odds right now, Sean Woodson is a minus 190 favorite with the plus 150 comeback for Yusuf Zalal. So if you parlay those up, even those two, because if there's no odds on that one, Ariane Lipski and Sean Woodson, plus 220. Let me do it right now. I'll do it in real time. So we'll do Sean Woodson at minus 190, and then we'll take a look at Ariane Lipski at plus 220. And if we just put something simple like $25 on it, you get a return of $122. So I just think there's a massive value to be had there. And if you wanted to do a parlay for the main card, I think a very, very interesting parlay would be Sakai, Tybura, and Delize. Those three money line can get you some great, great value, folks. So that's what I got here. Don't forget, drop a like, subscribe. I went 5-1 in last week's card at UFC Fight Night 188. We're looking to do great things again. Got 6 fights on this card. I gave you some parlays. I gave you the money lines. I broke things down from a value perspective, from a betting value perspective. But what you need to do is you need to tune in on Friday when me and my co-host AJ break things down for our full-length, hour-long preview show. We're going to talk about all the main card stuff, see where he differs from my opinion, where I differ from his opinion, and see who comes out on top. As it stands right now, I'm 57-42 on the year. That's 57%. AJ is 46-53 on the year at 46%. He's near 50. I'm near 60 at this point, man. So y'all need to tune in. This is the best program to get your premier source of, betting, analysis, recap, the whole entire nine, folks. Follow us on Instagram at All Factors Considered. And if you like or you have any questions or anything like that, shoot us an email. You can go find that at our mailroom, allfactorsconsidered.com/mailroom, or hit us up on Instagram at All Factors Considered, or at me on Instagram at D496. So that's all I got for you, folks. Until next time, talk to you on Friday. Peace.